What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my thoughts on patch 6 after having played through it completely, as well as all the new content, and just kind of talking about how I feel the state of the game is now in patch 6. So if you're unaware, patch 6 launched. I believe it's actually still delayed on Mac. I don't know if that patch for Mac has actually went live, but otherwise it's live for people to test. And patch 6 was gigantic for BG3. So we got a new class, a new area, tons of graphical adjustments, tons of balance changes, tons of fixes. So we're going to talk about the big things for the most part. However, I do want to mention that the quantity of balancing changes and adjustments that have been made to the game are pretty substantial, and I recommend you check out some of the patch notes for that kind of stuff. Most of it is small and not really worth mentioning, which is why I'm not going to cover it in any great depth, because that stuff is kind of the point of early access, smoothing that kind of stuff out. But just know, there was a ton of it. First thing we're going to talk about is the Sorcerer class. If you're unaware, Sorcerers in D&D are people who inherited their powers from a bloodline typically, or a lineage. And currently we can be a Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer or a Wild Mage Sorcerer. Draconic Bloodline, of course, get their powers from a Draconic Bloodline, whereas Wild Mages use the forces of chaos to cast their spells. Both of these are really fun. The primary takeaway for these two for me was how well implemented they were. Sorcerers use sorcery points to use meta magic, which can then affect their spells. Meta magic will do things like let you cast 2 projectiles instead of 1, which is called a twinned spell. You can extend the reach of your spells, that kind of stuff. You get to pick some of your meta magic as you level up, which was just a lot of fun. Moreover, I think the way they added this to the UI was very well done. So you can see your sorcery points above your hotbar, and then the meta magic that you have available to you is available to the right of the hotbar. You just click on the meta magic, it will then highlight which spells are capable to be used with that meta magic, provided you have the sorcery points to use it, of course. And then once you select that spell, it applies the meta magic for you, which I think was a very smooth implementation of those mechanics. And just playing through the early access content with a sorcerer was a lot of fun, and I did enjoy it. Which makes sense, as Sorcerer tends to be one of those fan favorite classes. Now let's talk about the new area. This was really cool and had some amazing atmosphere. So Grimforge is an area in the Underdark, which was, as you might have guessed, a forge at one point. However, it is currently home to a bunch of Duergar. If you charm your way in, you can then complete some small quests. There's some back and forth between two rival factions of the Duergar, so to speak. Bit of a simplification, but I don't want to spoil it too much. But there's some back and forth there. Again, you can choose a side, but what I liked most about this was that it informed the main story a little bit, because at the end of Early Access, which is the end of Act 1, we're told that our next location that we're trying to reach is a place called Moonrise Towers, but the land around it is cursed. Well, in Grimforge, we find, or at least hear about, an item called a Moon Lantern, which is apparently capable of navigating this cursed land without causing any harm to the person wielding the lamp. So it just kind of shed a light on some of the mechanics of the next area that's coming up that we probably won't see until launch, but still, thought that was pretty neat. They also added a bunch of enemies to the game, some encounters. Personally, I had a lot of fun with the mimics. They surprised me, and I was like, oh my god. So mimics are always great for that kind of moment, and the mimic models look amazing. And then, with Grimforge being an actual forge, it's even possible to forge some adamantine items from the forge if you fight the boss of the forge, which is a fight more focused on tactics than actual power of your characters, which I thought was interesting. Truthfully, I personally don't enjoy that fight very much. I think it needs some tweaking. Specifically, what I think needs to be changed is the movement on the golem, because you basically have to line it up under the forge and then hit it with the big hammer that powers the forge, as this is really the only reliable way to deal damage to the golem, as it is mostly impervious to damage except when it's hit by the lava, and even then it's resistant, which means half damage, to all but a couple weapon types. So the encounter is designed around killing this thing with the forge itself, which is fine, but you can kind of get locked in this loop because in order to move him around the arena, you have to have someone hit him, and the first person that hits him in a round draws his threat assessment, and then he'll move towards that character for that round. And then when he gets close enough, he'll do a big stomp attack, do some damage even if he doesn't reach you. The problem with this is the amount of movement he has is just slightly off, so you can kind of get stuck in this loop where you cannot line him up under the forge properly. And being early access, my feedback for this would be literally just cut his movement by like a meter or two, and I think this would work a lot better and people would have a more fun time with it, because as it stands, it was mostly more annoying than fun. Now that said, that might just be an early access problem, to be fair, as this golem is about 4 levels higher than what you have access to in early access. Later on, when you can fight him at a higher level with more resources available to you, this might be a non-issue, to be honest, but as it stands, that's the way I feel about it. So, cool class, cool area, tons of atmosphere. Let's talk about probably the other biggest thing that was added to the game, and that was all of the lighting changes, as well as the kind of graphical adjustments that were added. So now, when your party gets into a fight and people start getting low HP, you're going to be able to visually see that on your characters. They're going to look beat up. If someone has 1 HP, they are beat up. They have a bruised face, there's bruises everywhere, they're dirty, and it makes the game feel a bit grittier. The lighting itself is vastly improved, and it makes the game feel a little less whimsical and kind of darker, even in brighter areas. And I think that fits the tone and setting of the traditional Baldur's Gate games much better than the sort of whimsical art style it had before, where things would get hit but they wouldn't look like it even affected them, and everything just looked too shiny, basically. So truthfully, I just feel like this particular patch, the graphical improvements especially, really made the game feel more appropriate in terms of its tone, simply because your characters would actually visually show the damage and things they were taking, which made it feel a little more weighty, as much as a game like this can, you know? So overall, my actual opinions on patch 6. Fantastic patch. Hard to understate how large this patch actually was. Honestly, I think the game feels just a ton better since they added this patch. And while there are still some bugs and things, for instance, my character's beard was just shaking violently throughout most of the playthrough, which was super funny, to be honest, but bugs like that still exist, so, you know, it's still early access, so it's still a little rough around the edges, but it's starting to feel a lot better, and you can really see the polish that they're working on, in addition to all the other areas of the game that aren't in early access that they are still working on. Honestly, great addition, huge step in the right direction. I'm glad to see them make it. And I'm looking forward to hopefully checking out more classes and things as they get added to early access. As it stands, the ballpark estimate, not an official declaration by any means, is like last half of 2022 for release, which about checks out, I'd imagine. But overall, looking forward to seeing what they add to early access. Hope you enjoyed the video, as well as a look at a few things from the patch itself. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.